As the founding chair of the Women's Sports Collective and with more than a decade of experience in professional sports with the Golden State Warriors and Brooklyn Nets, her career speaks for itself. Recognized as a change maker, as she's been honored with NYU's Teaching Excellence Award. Please join me in welcoming Professor Gina Antoniello.
Literally just happy to be here in this game. I am so excited to welcome Underdog Global Partners here tonight. From the panelists you will hear from to the others that are here tonight, Nicolas and Dan and Joe. Thank you for being here. But one of the reasons I wanted to have this group come out is because they are truly visionary in their investment. This is the group that brought you Campo Basso, and if you've been paying attention to ESPN and new narratives, they have really become the Wrexham of Italy. Having their journey followed in a mini docuseries and seeing what true belief and true investment in sport properties that have been historically overlooked, what they can do, not just for the team and the organization, but for the communities, for the players, and for the people that are impacted by this investment. So when Rizzetta told me that their next project was Donna Roma, and at the time it was Res Roma, and he told me a little bit about the history of the club. My interest in not just the Italian landscape, but also investment in women's sports, I was all ears. This is a club that historically was born for women that have come from historically marginalized backgrounds to be able to play. To be able to do something for them in an environment that wasn't born to serve that. So this has a deep history of creating spaces for women without having a male counterpart team, being born for women's opportunities. So when this group came in and saw the potential and thought, what does this look like with true investment, with true independence, and with the goal of restoring the legacy of playing in Serie A, I knew they were onto something very, very special. So I want to start by welcoming Matt Rizzetta up. He's our first panelist, who is that has multiple properties, so Campo Basso FC, Napoli Basket, Res Donna Roma, and you'll hear more about those projects tonight. Matt's leadership in bringing this group together and in creating these spaces, we wouldn't be here without you, so thank you for being here and sharing your time and energy. I'd love to bring up Masucci, who is a 25-year veteran of the game. I mean, he looks very young. I think it's good skincare and all of the things. But
he's not married yet.
Come on.
Yeah.
His lovely partners here. So inside yeah, we're gonna cut that. We're gonna edit that. Marco has a track record as a coach, as an executive, with an international calcio travel turismo company, and he's bringing all of that expertise to reimagining what this club could look like. So he's been involved in every facet. He's now the CEO and managing partner of Donna Roma. So we're very happy to have you. Welcome. Next, I'd love to welcome up Nicolas Hien, who is an investor with Underdog Global Partners, and has been a part of the Campobasso project, and now is all in really leading the vision with Res Donna Roma. He has significant experience in many different companies with capital funding, and is currently the Chief Information Officer at Dollarama, which is one of the biggest retailers in North America. So based out of Canada, we have our international visitors today. And then lastly, let's bring up Alexandra Ross, who is the commercial director and investor in Res Donna Roma, and has, again, a wonderful track record of success on the digital and e-commerce side, partnering with Nick for many years at Dollarama. So now this group has come together to reimagine what this team could be and what it could mean within the global landscape. So I'm going to start with Matt. We have like 3 mics. I'm sorry we couldn't get 5, so we're going to share. I want to start with you, Matt. So Napoli basket, Campobasso, Res Donna Roma, you're part of the group that launched Brooklyn FC. You have digital properties. Now you're a producer for an ESPN docuseries, now filming its 2nd season. You've accomplished quite a bit with a huge dream. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is the vision for Underdog Global Partners, and how does Res Donna Roma fit into this?
Sure, thanks. Gina, I have to say first off, it's amazing to be here tonight. It's amazing to feel accepted at NYU, a place that rejected me 25 years ago.
That's our ad.
I showed up at admissions and they said, they think that I'm missing a digit in my GPA, and they sent me right back home. Also, thank you for putting this together. Kim and Michelle, I really enjoyed your panel. I look forward to getting to know you both better. If we're here today to talk about Donna Roma, it's because of pioneers such as yourselves who put, I think, us in a position to have a platform now as a global sport to really invest and take the sport to the next level. So thank you for all of your contributions. And the Underdog Global Partners really is the culmination of, about 5 or 6 years ago, I started pivoting my career. I started in media and marketing and built a business, and then started investing in sports. And really what I wanted to do was I got to a point in my life where I wanted to invest in projects I believed in. And it started with Campobasso, was this little place. They literally said Campobasso non esiste, Molise non esiste. It's the part of Italy that doesn't exist. And I was enamored with, and it was also the part of Italy where my grandparents immigrated from. So I had this big dream of putting the city and the region on the map through the soccer club, which by far is the most important vehicle for the entire region. And this has sort of been the thread that has continued over the past 5 or 6 years, and now is culminating with the launch of Underdog Global Partners. It's really to build projects you believe in. And in Campobasso, we believed in a region, we believed in people, we believed in diaspora. There's over 1 million people who come from Campobasso who live in North America. Obviously, Napoli is a major metropolitan city, an incredible European destination at this point, with an international addressable fan base that is unlike maybe almost any other city in the world except for Rome, by the way. And we're really investing in the growth of basketball overseas, right? And in Donna Roma, to me, I have to admit, you never want to choose favorite children, but this is quickly becoming one of my favorite children, because you're investing in so many things you believe in. In my case, I believe greatly in Italy. I believe greatly in women's soccer, and most importantly, the father of 3 daughters, Viviana, Valentina, and Simone. I believe greatly in the power and potential of female empowerment, and for me, it's been an incredible opportunity then to do it. Being able to join hands with people. Ultimately, these projects all come down to the operators and the people who are working hard day and night to put them together. And Marshall and I met about a couple of years ago, but a year ago we started coming up with this idea. It was unfathomable to me that a city like Rome, we'll get into the trends and the backdrop on which we invested, but it was unfathomable to me that a city like Rome, with the amount of appeal and the importance of Rome on a global level, did not have and a women's team that was independently women, female run, female created, without any sort of affiliation with a men's team, it was really unfathomable to me. So him and I started to talk about this about a year ago. We studied the market. We looked up and down, at every possible small, tier club that we could possibly find. And we had this vision for rebranding it and turning it into really an international hub, much like Angel City, much like what some of the folks did in London with the Lionesses, and really turn Rome into a hub for international women's soccer. And then, I found a great partner. Without Marco, none of this would have ever been possible. So I'm just happy to be here. It's been an incredible journey so far. It's very much still at the beginning. So we're pumped to be a part of it. We're pumped to be building it and to have great people around us.
Marco, to that end, I'm going to come to you. When you're looking at the sporting side, what are the key measures of success? Like, is it when investment dollars are flowing in? Is it wins? Is it development? Is it long-term growth? How do you approach kind of putting together this team and putting it in a position to thrive?
We established certain KPIs way before we actually played our first game, and I don't think that wins and losses could be the only KPI of an organization, right? So it's important. It's important for a lot of things, but you can't be the only KPI. So what we're trying to do, we obviously wanted to launch right off the bat with a team that's competitive, to show that our investment dollars and what we're trying to do is serious. That helps us recruit players. That helps us get funding from municipalities. That helps us bring in other investors. What we're also looking to do is develop, we're looking to develop players. So a lot of the pitch when we're recruiting players and speaking to agents is not only that we want top players to play with us and hopefully get promoted to Serie A as early as this year, which the objective keeps getting closer and closer because we won a few games, so we're all really excited about that potential, is also to give them the opportunity to go to the next step. So our market is finding players that maybe haven't been, that have been overlooked, or are coming off. We have one of our best players came off, she was actually diagnosed with cancer. So she's recovered from that. Nobody wanted to touch her. We brought her in. She's been unbelievable for us. So even giving them the opportunity to have a great season with us and maybe move on to the next level with or without us is part of our objective as well. And then finally, just creating something sustainable. There has to be a legacy. There has to be infrastructures that we're helping to create, build, academy programs for younger girls, get them involved in the game at a younger age. And I think that's pretty much the overall picture of what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Nick, I'm coming to you. I really enjoyed our conversations and your approach to how you're thinking about what is needed beyond investment dollars. And thinking about your involvement in the Montreal Roses. So I'm wondering if you can share about your experience with this club and how you might bring best practices into this new project with Donna, Roma.
Yeah, I think the journey with the Roses has been amazing for everyone's sake. 1 year ago, we didn't have any team, we didn't have any league, we had to build everything from scratch. And it was very interesting because there was nothing and we had to build it from anything, right? So we started without thinking about the men's team or how it should be done. We did it our way. It's like not as a blueprint of the men's game, as something built from scratch with his own identity. And recently I was with Marco at the facility, and we were talking to a player that she's a huge experience, different club in Europe, etc. And she was telling us what we have here, we don't have it anywhere else. And she had been in a huge club, but that was always a club with men's team, and they were after the men's team, the U18, the U17, and the women professional team was the fourth in the pecking order. And what she had in a club, and in an independent club from a men's team, he had something that she felt that she was central to the project, which is really, and Matt mentioned it, and I think this is the key takeaway. It's you need to build something that is really woman driven and that has its own identity.
Alex, I'm going to come to you because we talked for hours about this project, in that it resonates in such a way where it shows up as purpose driven, where it aligns with just this empowerment and this reflection of personal identity and social identity and how that's activated through sport. And you don't necessarily come from a sport industry background, but you've been able to align your interests and your experience to contribute so meaningfully as a commercial director for the merchandise line, for how this club is being positioned. So, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the project and what's been particularly, fun and meaningful about being a part of this?
Yeah, of course. So just for my background, so I used to work with Nick at Roma, logistic project, e-commerce project, and then I was also on sideline doing a lot of fundraising event for sport event for hospital, for museum. And I think 6 months ago, I went in Nick's office and I was like, okay, I need to take like 4 months to just take a step back, and I want my next job to be like a real passion. I love my job, but I want more. So then I had time to think about it, and one thing was like, okay, Alex, you like the logistic, the e-commerce, all of that, but you also like to have social impact. And then Nick called me because he knows that I love those two things a lot. And he said, I have a great opportunity for you, and I think that's something that you will feel passion and you're gonna like it. So I started like that, and honestly, there's something so strong just having, and when I start designing the uniform with Diaza, it's something so strong of just thinking of what the woman wants. And I think it's important to have women that are part of the design to make sure, because we understand the emotion side of women. We understand the perspective of women. And that's something that I was so happy to do. And that was my first project when I joined with Marco. And so now you can see we have pink, and you'll still to continue to see a lot of pink. But yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but
No, it's fantastic. I think it speaks to the idea that there's balance and there's authenticity, and it's coming from a very real place. And this team is very global. So when you're thinking about a North American investment team that has deep ties to Italy and to the European context, Matt, how can investors, what would be your advice for how investors can balance this authenticity, but with the local culture, knowing that the ambitions are for global growth?
So it's a great question, Gina. I can tell you from our experience, and I think this is one of the things that has made all of us fall in love with the women's game in particular, because I think you can be so much more inventive and experimental with the women's game right now. I think literally it's, the way I look at it is the New York Yankees were founded in 1903, and we're owners in 1903 building the next New York Yankees in the women's game. You can do that with the women's game. You can create realities, you can breathe projects to life from nothing. These are going to be, in my opinion, this is what I think everyone in this room shares. These are going to be the New York Yankees of the next generation, and you're building that from scratch. So your question around balancing authenticity and the globalization of it, I think in the women's game, particularly in Europe, we have an advantage which we've all leveraged, which is that we can bring a new brand to life. If we had done this, we looked at the Rome market before we did this transaction, and Marco obviously is a huge Italian football connoisseur, as am I, and you look at these behemoths that are in Italian football, particularly in Rome, AS Roma and Lazio dominate the market over there, as you know, Gina, professoressa. But what I found and what Marco found and Nick, and I think this was our thesis, is that no matter how good the women's teams are for them, they're always going to be overshadowed by the men's teams. And I didn't think that was right. We didn't think that was right. We felt like a women's team, particularly in Rome, deserves its own brand. It deserves to be uniquely identifiable as a women's team, and I think that has been an opportunity for us to be much more inventive and creative and to bring to life a brand new project, but also to do it, like you said, while respecting, in this case, the tradition. Res Roma, which was the predecessor team, we actually made a conscious decision to retain the name Res because it meant so much to this local community. A good friend of mine in Italy is Marco De Sisti, who's the son of one of the best midfielders in the history of Italian football, Picchio De Sisti. And he told me, he said, Matt, and this was kind of an interesting turning point for me. We hadn't been involved, obviously, with the men's game for several years with Campobasso and whatnot. And he said, you have to look at the cultural climate, and you have to look at cultural trends. And he said, historically in Italy, it's a male-driven, had historically been a male-driven, male-dominated sports culture, and girls who played soccer were shunned. It was a sign of poverty in many cases, and the young girls who came from means rode horses, they played tennis, they played volleyball. And he told me 5 or 6 years ago when we got into the men's game, he said, Matt, this is all changing. He said, what girls now who are playing soccer, they're embraced and they're starting to become an accepted part of the fabric of our culture. And that's when I said, wow, we should really get ahead of this and create a platform that enables, because the other thing is you don't want to be too early either. If we would have tried this project, 15, 20 years ago on the backdrop of the cultural climate that was the sports culture in Italy, I don't think it would have been successful, not because the vision wouldn't have been as ambitious, but just because the culture would not have been ready to embrace it and adopt it the way it is now. So I think timing, also comes down to a lot of these things. And then Gina, I'll end by saying this. I think in the case of the Rome project, one thing we learned from operating Campobasso was you have to go from an inside out approach when it comes to the culture. So the first thing you have to do is, and we've been very conscious, Dan, my partner Dan Doyle, and everybody, and we've been very conscious about this too with Napoli, where you have to gain respect locally first before you could even touch anything internationally. Otherwise, it's going to come across as very disingenuous. You're going to lose all your credibility. So that, I think, is the very first thing we did with this project, was we said we want to we need to embrace the community. We need to respect the community. We need to do everything we can to show that we're here not as Americans, we're betting on, there's certainly an investment thesis, but beyond the investment thesis, you're betting on a community, you're betting on a culture, and it has to be a reciprocal relationship where you're betting on the community just like the community is betting on you. And once you do that, it takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. You need to establish a lot of credibility and sweat equity to build that kind of trust. But in time, once you do that, then you can take a little bit more, liberties to grow the brand globally. And I don't think we want it to be global first and community second. We want it to be community first and global second.
Thank you for that. We spent some time learning from Coach Kim and Coach Michelle a little bit about just the lived experience and some of the challenges and constraints. And Matt, what you just pointed to shows that there's still some ideological constraints that you need to be mindful of as you build this. And the heartbeat of this team are the women. They are the product. They are the ones that are out there, professionalizing. So, Marco, this question's for you. Noting some of these challenges, whether it's Matt's, notes or the ideological constraints, like what are the unique challenges then in establishing this sustainable pipeline of women athletes? Maybe in, we don't want to compare, but compared to some of your other experiences.
The Italian female sports experience is something I haven't lived anything like this in my life. So I just want to try and make a quick comparison so that you understand. The level of female sports in North America is light years ahead of where we are in Europe. So you said the word professionalizing, and that's the biggest issue that we're facing. So, for example, we played a game this weekend. The refereeing our game was probably a 6th or 7th category referee, whereas we're professional women, second division women. there's Serie A men, then there's Serie B men, Serie C men, then there's the Primavera men, then there's U19 men. So the guy who's reffing our game is probably somebody that would be refereeing recreational soccer here. So
Yes,
that
Mark we would say that if we won the game, by the way.
anyway, so we had so that trickles all the way down. It's the same thing for coaches. It's the same thing for infrastructure, right? So the biggest issue with professionalizing the game right now is the people that are working within the game need to be trained, and the next generation coming through is far better than the first generation. But the first generation are the ones that trained all these players and dealt with all these players for the last 20, 25 years. So we're at that crossroads where we're trying to make that jump. I think that the lack of media coverage and the lack of role models is a huge issue. And just now with Italy doing tremendously well in the Euro, I've seen, while I was in Rome, I saw a shift during that tournament of nobody caring. Then all of a sudden, people that were speaking about the men's Serie A game are now saying, hey, did you watch the women? We almost beat England last night. So that's something that didn't exist. So the more mediatization and the more success that the national team has, the more the games are going to be broadcast. I think that's going to help. But it's very difficult to convince a 10-year-old girl to do something when there's no model for her to try and replicate, to try and copy. So it's getting there, but that's still a significant issue for us.
So, Nick, when you're thinking about aligning capital resources with these initiatives like player development, like infrastructure, like community engagement, how do you do that? Like, what are you looking for? How do you bring this all into alignment to prioritize that equally?
Yeah, that's interesting because I can give you a bit of the back office story of what's happening in my life every day when you're a friend with Matt. It's actually we mentioned about this vision of deploying the capital for independent women team, etc. But what happened is when you're a friend with Matt at 5:30 every morning, you receive a text. And what this text, this guy has a crazy deal flow, right? So, and true story, you can read my phone. Every 2 days, Matt's coming to me and he said, hey, we have this opportunity. There's this club. Every day, the first answer is, hey Matt, do they have a women team? Yeah, they have a women team. But is it the women team only? No, but it's super interesting and we should be looking at that. And he's right. Because when you're deploying capital, all those deals are super, super interested. And the idea of staying true to the vision and staying true is very tough when you're investors. And I want to jump in on all these deals. But you look at it and it's not just about it's about keeping the vision, and it's also about not keeping just a short-term vision, because it's super tempting. 2 games in, we're 2-0. I think we're pounding Marco with text message on, hey, we should invest in the team and we should find this player, and we break his head with this idea because we're getting excited. So it's super tempting to deploy capital on the first team. But when you take a step back and you look at the big picture, then there's player development, there's infrastructure, there's community, and they are not conflicting priorities. They are all part of the same vision, and I don't think that's. I think we should be looking at it that way and keeping just a long run and saying, okay, don't get too excited. And Marco is very, very, very good to keep our head cool with this. So yeah, don't get too excited. This is the priority. So I think that's the idea. You get the idea. You stuck to the long-term vision and you deploy capital on all those fronts, because Kim was mentioning it. When you look at developing player, it's not just developing player, it's developing role model, developing the next generation of player. You look at infrastructure, it's not just turf or brick and mortar, is you're developing really a home for the player, not like women being a secondary tenant on this, and community. It's just not charity, it's about all developing a future fan base, etc. So I think it's very emotional, this type of investment. So it's tough to get through to the thesis. So I think it's good to have other people around and balancing each other.
And one of those other people, Alex, is you, because with something that is so purpose-driven, with the spirit of the brand identity and the positioning of it, what is a good approach, or what is Donna Roma's approach to that storytelling or those campaigns that are authentic to the club or to women's sport, rather than just being an extension of a men's program? How do you bring that to life? How do you position that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there's different things. I think what Nick was talking about, long-term vision, that's important. So if we look at just the sponsor don't want anymore just a logo and on a panel, give money, logo, that's it. They want a story. They want more. So an example that we can give is let's say we have a sponsor for the training center. Then okay, we can have the logo inside the training center, but we can create more and put reel on Instagram of the training center with the player, give some tips to the community of this, and have this reel presented by the sponsor. So the storytelling is really important. Also, same thing, make sure to have the community that maybe can come to the training center and do a training session, training event that is done with and presented by the sponsor, but done with the players. And so, yeah, storytelling is, I think for me, it's the heart, and it's important to create attachment also with the community, the players. The players have all their own story also that we can not maybe all relate, but if we share those stories to the people, then maybe someone will say, hey, I can see myself and I want to watch Donna Roma instead of another team. So yeah, I think it's really important, and it's something that sponsors are looking, the players also to be passionate and go on the field every day. They need to understand why they're playing for that team. So yeah, I think storytelling is the most important thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting because in the next few weeks you will debut a lot of the gear. We're going to preview one of the brand mantras later before we all head to the after party that's coming.
Oh, really? The merch?
Yes.
Oh my God, okay, I didn't know that. Wow.
The merch is coming, and it is very empowerment forward. I mean, even you're wearing something right now, the logo that is, an empowered, upward, forward-looking woman that represents the future of Rome and what's being built and the independence. So we are really excited to see what's to come on the commercial side of this to kind of share that emotional engagement.
Of course, and that's something that I didn't talk about, but the merch, you can also tell the story around the merch, and I think that's what we're gonna see. I didn't know that we'll have that tonight, but that's perfect, yeah.
Matt, when you're thinking about the other sectors of your portfolio, what do you see, or what takeaways, best practices, cases do you see for scaling women's soccer, whether it's domestically or with the Res Donna Roma project?
I think the one thing I've learned through the years, Gina, in the sports ownership journey is that it's not too different than any other business I've ever run, where you're really betting on people. You're betting on great people. I've been blessed to have met Marco and Nick and my partners here, Joe, Dan, and Nicola right there. We're 10 daughters, by the way, just between the four of us right there. So this project is extra meaningful to us, and the Rosario's here too. You're really just betting on people. You're betting on people. I think the biggest difference that I would note with running a sports business and a regular business is that I've never run a business that's quite this public. So I never ran a media business in New York City for almost 15 years. I can't remember one time I was stopped on Park Avenue or Madison Avenue or on East 12th Street and somebody said, Matt, what on earth were you thinking staffing this client account the way you did, right? I go to Italy, now we've been in New York, we were in New York, and people pull us aside and they're like, Prez, that's Marco's name now, Prez. Why did you play this left back? Why do you play this right back? Why do we play 4-3-3 instead of, 3-5-2? And that's something that really takes a lot of time to get used to. And I think the women's game in Europe is still evolving. You know, we're not front and center on a national scale, right, Marco? The way, but I think that is all changing. Like you said, even the European Cup, I think, brought a lot of visibility to the game in Italy. Every time I visit friends of mine who own teams in other countries, France, England, I mean, they feel the momentum. They really, feel the momentum. It is truly a movement, and I think that's one thing that I really learned in the experience. Also, Gina, before you hand it back, I want to say the brand Donna Roma was, Gina was very instrumental in it, and I think the idea that Alex had about us making sure we have diverse perspectives. We're also cognizant of the fact that the ownership group started with it was males who had this vision, so we wanted to pull in as many diverse perspectives as possible and get diversity of views and input. And we really studied, what does the Donna Roma, Donna means woman, what does the woman of Rome represent? What does she mean? And you remember going through those exercises, and we kicked that around so many times. And ultimately, I want to say it was a woman who made that decision, and that was you, Gina, right? It was. Gina made the decision. So the Donna Roma was Gina's creation. True or false?
I remember, having that conversation, seeing those references and the brand storytelling, and it's amazing, months down the line, where this product is in the future. And I'm really happy to be a part of it and to be able to bring your thought leadership collectively to NYU to show really what's next. So I have a question that's going to start to wind down this panel, and I'm going to ask for questions from the audience for the panel as well. We have time for that. But how do you ensure that investment, whether it's in this project or any project, doesn't just fuel short-term visibility, but it leads to that lasting impact, that lasting infrastructure, and sustainable. So how do you ensure that it's not just short-term, that it's going to be long-term?
You want me to take that one, or you take that?
I can take it. It's just that I think the idea is we need to create something sustainable. Meaning, something sustainable means we need to get revenue into this business, because you start a project like that, as Marco mentioned, there's zero revenue. So obviously, initially you do the investments, you forecast, let's say, 2-year cash flow, invest in infrastructure, etc. But if 2 years or 3 years down the line is still no revenue, it's definitely not sustainable, and there's no investor that will invest in a venture like that, right? So when you start a project like that, you have a certain expiry date to be interesting and to create revenue. And I think that's what we're trying to build, an ecosystem with including academy, traveling, different revenue streams, sponsored that Alex mentioned, merchandising, etc. So you have this window when you do the club acquisition to create enough revenue stream to make it sustainable long term.
What, for students, for future industry leaders, for those that want to be a part of ownership, team ownership, club ownership, what can they do to accelerate their progress, to be able to get a step closer to having that dream? I have students all the time, and I ask them, what is your North Star ambition? They're like, I want to be an owner. And you all are really living it. So what advice would you give them? Where can they start?
Stress management.
And you're doing fine. We talked about your skin care, and all of that. You're thriving. So what does stress management look like for you, Marco?
Can I answer that question?
Should we defer?
I'll defer to that.
I agree. I think you have to be passionate about it to be in sports ownership. It defies logic on many levels. So you have to be, I think, unreasonably passionate about your craft. Like Nick said, we're texting at 5:30 a.m. and we've already been on calls with Europe and our sporting directors and our coaches, and you're going all the way through the evening when it's New York time. And you do that for a reason. You don't just do that because you do it because you're passionate about it, because you have a vision, you believe deeply in the projects that you're building, and you pursue it with conviction, knowing that along the way, life and business are never a straight line. It's always a curvy line, and you have to know how to navigate through those curves, learn from them, and you got to keep your eyes focused on the prize, and there's a destination. And I think the beauty of the Donna Roma project is that we all know what the destination is. It's a beautiful destination. It's an opportunity to create like I said, the Yankees in 1903 were looking to create the next generation of sports franchises and do that by rallying around a community and a brand and a platform that in our case is incredibly unique, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful vision, and I think that that's really what keeps us going.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, you need to be willing to work super hard, and the pressure from an investment standpoint is also the pressure of every month we're looking at cash flow and the business is still losing money, and you keep your eyes and you say, okay, let's keep working, because it takes time before the return are coming. And I know that in the room there's people that are involved in different club, and I think it's a special business model. I've been involved with many venture in tech and it's totally different beast, right? Because the valuation of the club is not based necessarily on the profitability, right? You create value, you create assets, and so you need to have this long-term view, even as an investor, to say, okay, we're still losing money, but I know that my club is getting more and more value, and we are creating value. So I think that's the type of balancing act you need to have.
Wonderful. I want to see if there are any questions for this group from the audience, and Gia will run a mic to you so you can answer your question. And not all at once.
Hi, I'm Glenn. I want to talk about the sporting side. Why, did you play a 3-5-2? No, the conundrum of player acquisition with a budget that is probably not where you need it yet, maybe to get the players maybe that you immediately need to get to Serie A, but that to find those players you need scouts, and to me that's a conundrum. So how do you manage identification of players, which it seems because maybe you don't have the budget you need to actually look for more players to find the diamonds in the rough. So there you go, Marco.
You're looking for a job again?
There's an extra angle to that, is the fact that even if we would identify the players, we have to sell them on the project, which is very difficult. And there's one point I wanted to add on what they said, which ties in perfectly into the question. Is when we decided what type of brand we wanted to be, we had the image of being this high-end women's brand, and talk about empowerment and talk about all that stuff. So the second we got to Rome for the first time and saw the facility, and we saw the conditions that the players were in, my first call was to Matt, and we're being hypocrites on this, right? So we want to create an infrastructure, we want to create an environment for the girls, but we're saying we're going to treat you like professionals, but they're not paid like professionals. They're not housed like professionals. They're not they're not training on a field like professionals. So all those obstacles come way before identifying the right player. So now my biggest challenge in the first few months when we were trying to build a team was, how do we convince a player to trust us when they've played on so many clubs in their life where they've been lied to continuously. So I think those actions are really, really important, and we're trying as hard as we possibly could with the budget that we have to change as much as we can, as quick as we can. It's still not fast enough, because the standard that we're used to here in North American sports and North American female sports, it's almost shocking. Some of the things that you would see outside, in Europe, but we're trying best we can to change those conditions. So really, really long answer to my friend Glenn's question. When we're identifying players, we're trying to find players that are the right fit, that are also realistic acquisitions. And that oftentimes, unfortunately right now, comes through recommendations. My network at NCAA is pretty extensive, so that's helping a lot. And if we hit those foreign players correctly, we have a very good chance of competing, because an American player or Canadian player that has NCAA experience has physical qualities which in Europe right now don't exist, at least not in the second division. So that's a big advantage for us. But eventually, that's where we want to get. But we're just not there yet, Glenn, to be able to have people, from around, unless it's a friend like you that I can call and say, do you remember this kid from when you coached at Rutgers, and you can give me a recommendation.
Yeah, and I think the other big challenge we have when we are in Serie B, right? So when you're used to coach or to be with, like, for the Roses, or you look at premium Serie A or League One player or Premier League. Someone talk about player, you go on White Scout, you find 20 million video, it give you an ID. The guy, they are telling me, we have the chance to find this girl. I go on White Scout, and it's a ghost, because there's not enough coverage of women's soccer at lower league to be able to properly scout remotely, right? So you need to rely on agent contact, former coaches, etc. So it makes it very challenging, actually.
First of all, thank you guys for coming to speak to us today. My question is it's tiered a little bit. So I'll start off, I'm a big Arsenal fan, and Arsenal has been the hallmark of women's football in England for the last 10 years, biggest club in London. But one of the things, and I create a lot of content in football, so I'm really into the financial side and everything. One of the things our women's team did is that they really made an emphasis on creating a brand outside of Arsenal. So they wanted people to know Leah Williamson, Michelle Aubameyang, all these women's players outside of just the kind of soccer department and regards to things like that. But in turn, that's made us like the biggest women's team in England. The WSL has in turn grown because of that. A lot more money has come into it.
I don't think Chelsea would agree, but
yes.
keep going.
Before 2004 would have been one. But I was going to say, I think in Italy now we're seeing it with FC Como, and they've played a large emphasis on building a lifestyle brand. They have the Como Football Festival. I almost went. But they're really placing an emphasis on building up their women's brand outside of just FC Como, because we can talk about Nico Paz, Cesc Fabregas, all we want, but FC Como women is building up themselves as well. And so my question is, what are you guys doing to kind of, because I know you mentioned kind of getting that interest from the Serie A and like Fiorentina, Napoli, Lazio, Roma, like obviously they've been established, but what are you guys doing to kind of build up the individuality of women's football and women's Italian football, as opposed to just trying to pique that interest from the men's game?
I can go. So first, it started. So congratulations on the very good taste for Arsenal, and apart from it, I think the idea is to start with the independent team, right? So for Arsenal or for Chelsea, the reason why they split it out, this team, is because they are trying to create their own identity, right? So for us, it's a bit more simple because we don't have a man attached to it. So it naturally becomes a women's club, and it's a bit easier, and there's no competition between the two. Because you mentioned it for Como, for example, they are putting a lot of money into this the women game. They are increasing salary. They are creating good condition, and still when people are talking about Como, they are talking about Cesc Fabregas and the men's team, right? So I think that's exactly the reason why we're trying to focus on women club only, not to be in this dilemma.
Thank you, grazie.
So, one more just quick cross-cutting panel question to close this out. What is one word to describe the future of women's soccer? What is one word to describe the future of women's soccer?
Is this reach of us?
Yeah, each of us.
One
King
word
of the
only.
Pearls. What's going on?
I would say legacy.
He stole mine.
I would say inspiration.
I would say limitless.
442.
Yeah, no. I'll say unique. Unique's mine.
Wonderful. So please join me in thanking them for their incredible announcement. And we do have, you were very generous enough to bring something for both Coach Michelle and Coach Kim. So I'd like to invite you back up, and they have some gifts for you. Yeah. We're gonna take a quick picture.
So great to meet you guys. No, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.